TPWS. Oh yeah, full service, full service. Oh my god, I got it right on a T. That is awesome, 240 AP. Hello everybody, welcome back to Train Sim World, where we are currently playing 1W41 London Paddington to Didcot Parkway. Let's get right into it. Folks, for us to get started, what we need to do is, well actually, best to look at our timetable. We got 2 stops, Slough and Reading. We gotta get to Slough by 8:37 and Reading by 8:53. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn on our master key because that thing's currently locked. We're going to put our reverser to forward. Over here we're going to turn on DSD isolation to on or normal, AWS isolation to on, and press Q to eliminate that annoying sound. We're going to turn on our fan speed just to get a little heat happening in here. And we need, because of the time is 8:30 at night, we need to turn our marker lights to night headlamp and marker mode. Since we're here, we'll contact Stingler. Stingler says it's okay to proceed. We're going to release our train brakes. And as soon as the brake cylinder drops down to 0 and the brake pipe pressure drops up to 5.1, we can finally get our train on a roll. We might as well hit the guard buzzer and put the gauge dimmer on while we're waiting. We'll do throttle 3 in the hopes that we can do it. We'll have to wait for that brake cylinder to go down the rest of the way before we can officially do it. Now, I could turn on the cab lights here, and the only good thing about the cab lights, I can see everything around me and just see really clearly. The downside about the cab light, as you can tell right now, is I can't see anything out of the window, and this is just mind-boggling. So for the sake of driving at night here, we're going to turn that light off. It's going to be so much better for everybody watching at home to be able to see this out the window much more easier. So I'm taking off with throttle 5 a little bit. I know that amperes goes over just a touch. I know that risks wheel slips. I'm not going to worry about the wheel slip for now. What I do want to do actually is go into camera 8. As my train goes rolling on by, I am actually looking for things that look very similar to this, but it's further down the line here. Those are the little blue ones. I want the one that's actually on the track. So you guys might remember me talking about TPWS systems. I did not realize this, but apparently in Train Sim World they did model this. I just didn't see it further down the track. Maybe I was going too fast or whatnot. It just seemed like I was going much faster than it appeared. And so this was the TPWS system. This thing would energize or de-energize. You actually have 2 variants, this one and that one. I'll get out of the way of my train. So as the train rolled over them, if they are energized, they will activate my AWS system. If they are not energized, they will not activate my AWS system. And where it becomes highly important, by the way, with the AWS system is you want to be able to, alert the driver and let them know that you might be hitting some red lights. You might want to alert the driver and let them know you might be changing speeds. You might want to alert the driver and let them know they're going to be changing tracks. And the TPWS system will activate in certain instances if it's turned on. None of it's turned on here in London Paddington. A lot of it's turned on further down the tracks. And that's the point you want to be able to toggle that switch and turn it on, folks. So the one final thing I will say about the TPWS system, if you accidentally run over these type of things and you accidentally trigger your AWS and you accidentally don't press Q in time and you accidentally screw up so bad somehow that your AWS is triggered and your train gets shut down, the best thing you could do is probably help it along. Throw your train brake, just put it on full service, get your train stopped completely, and then what you actually have to do, what's going to happen is the brake demand light's going to turn on, and in order to deal with turning that brake demand off, you actually have to hit the emergency brake and essentially vacate the tube of the remaining air pressure. Once the tube is officially vacated of air pressure, so to speak, that point the brake demand light does turn off, and you might as well move this back to running. And then what you have to wait for, unfortunately, is you have to wait for your brake pipe to go back to 5.1, and you have to wait your brake cylinder goes back down to 0. Until that happens, you can't really do a whole lot. You have to kind of sit there waiting patiently, and once that all happens, you can finally get your train moving forward again. So the TPWS, I remember explaining this quite a bit in length in the other mission, but I didn't explain what you do with your actual train when that happens. I'm already speeding. We're going to 0.04 or whatever, 0.4% grade. So we're just going to leave it alone. It'll be fine. I'll deal with a couple of speed overages, I guess you could say. Eventually it'll move up to 100 and I should be okay, folks. I should be okay. Don't worry. We're looking for 8850 for a platinum medal. And this may look like I'm screwing my game up, but it's not. I am going to be alright. You may not realize it, but the Great Western Railway was founded in 1833 and received an enabling act of Parliament by 1835, and the first train officially ran in 1838. And the original initial route was actually from London to Bristol in 1841. That was the first train route that was officially done and complete, so to speak. The original Great Western Railway was actually a broad gauge railway, and I'm going to share some pictures with you. There's a couple different ones. One of them is the gauge length. So the most minimum gauge you can get is actually called minimum gauge. Who would have thought you would actually have a gauge called minimum gauge? I definitely would not have thought that. No one else probably would think of that too. But minimum gauge starts off at about 15 inches. Who would have realized that? Then from there goes to narrow gauge. Narrow gauge runs from 600 millimeters all the way up to 1432 millimeters, just to keep it simple. In inches, it's more like a foot and something inches, almost 2 feet, and it goes all the way up to 4 feet, 8 something inches, right? Standard gauge is officially 1435 millimeters or 4 feet, 8.5 inches. So by now, the Great Western Railway is running on standard gauge rail. I'm going to come back to that in just a few minutes. But broad gauge actually starts off at 4 feet, 8 7/8 of an inch, or 1445 millimeters in the Italian rail broad gauge line. And Brunel, or the one that the Great Western Railway uses, that one officially is the largest or the widest broad gauge rail. This bridge here I think will be a better example where it's very wide and the width is actually to accommodate broad gauge rail. And when they switched over to standard rail, the rail lines were actually able to add more rails to it, but they didn't change the design of the bridges. So like take this bridge here with the arches and being very wide opening arches. Again, they started out with broad gauge as a way to kind of keep competitors from competing in the same area that they were driving in. But eventually they opened it up to mixed gauge, where you had broad gauge and standard gauge on a single track. And eventually, I don't want that to go off right now, eventually they started phasing out broad gauge over time, and everything eventually moved over to mixed, from broad gauge to mixed gauge to eventually standard gauge. And as of now, just about everything is considered standard gauge rail. The idea behind it also, on top of trying to keep the competitors out, is also trying to keep standard gauge out as well. So the Great Western Railway did their best to try to build out as much of the broad gauge as it could. It wasn't until 1861 that mixed gauge was brought to Paddington to allow passenger train to go from London to Chester. By the time 1877 happened, the very last broad gauge route was officially opened, and this happened over in the St. Ives branch in West Cornwall. And there also was a small extension of Sutton Harbour in Plymouth in 1879. Those were the very last two brand new broad gauge routes. By the time Great Western Railway was in control of the entire line from London to Penzance, it started converting the remaining broad gauge routes and converted all the tracks into standard gauge. And the very last broad gauge service left Paddington Station on 1892. The very Monday after that, you ended up having trains from Penzance moving on standard gauge locomotives. A lot of people will call this God's Wonderful Railway. That's one of the acronyms of GWR besides Great Western Railway. But a lot of people will also call it the Great Way Round. The reason it was called the Great Way Round was because in the early days, the Great Western Railway would literally take forever to go from point A to point B. It would take like a very circuitous route to finally get to point B, which was really ridiculous, and it took forever for them to finally change this. And by the time broad gauge was officially phased out, I'm going to have that issue with the alerter going off on me at some point. By the time broad gauge was officially phased out, what you ended up with having, the burden of trying to deal with standard gauge and broad gauge was just completely gone. Now you just had standard gauge. And so that meant the company Great Western Railway started constructing all of its new lines and upgrading old lines. It shortened the company's route that essentially gave them the Great Way Round name. We're about to come up on Slough here. We're supposed to be there at 8:37. It is 8:33, so we've got some time. The idea behind slowing down, you probably don't want to slow down at least until you're about 3 miles out. So once we're about 3 miles out, we're going to start slowing our train down. This is about the point it takes to go from London Paddington to almost Slough to finally hit the full 125. 125. And then unfortunately, if you have to stop at Slough, you have to start all over again. It'll take from Slough all the way to Reading to get the 125 back again. Just something you got to deal with. At least with the network turbo, you don't have to deal with that as much, but it's much harder for a network turbo to be on time if they're sticking with their maximum 90 miles an hour. In World War I, the Great Western Railway started making improvements such as adding restaurant cars, better conditions for third-class passengers. They actually included steam heating. Who knew steam heating would be an issue? Steam heating of the trains and faster express services. Now, around this period, that is when the Great Western Railway introduced something called road motor services, and an alternative to building new lines in rural areas, and started using steam rail motors to bring cheaper operations to existing branch lines. So you probably know you're not going to make it when you see 0.9 miles and you're 70 miles an hour. My goodness. I don't want to have to do full service if I don't have to, but I'm probably going to have to do full service if I need to, if that makes any sense for folks. So welcome to Slough, folks, where there's always somebody standing on the yellow line, which is really annoying, so we're going to have to beep at them from this far away to let them know to get the heck off the yellow line. I don't know why people keep doing this, but our train's slowing down way too much. We are currently about a minute early, so I'm going to try to speed this train up a bit because I'm going way too slow. I'm hitting a wall, my goodness. Part of the reason we got too many people on the platform, we got this network turbo that just pulled in from some other location. They came off the track over there that went off to the left. We want to be able to stop right here where the HST sign is located. This is where our stop's going to be, and we're going to wait on our train to kind of pull up right about here. So there's a chance I'm going to probably overspeed this. I am so bad, my goodness. If the red light was right here, I'd be screwed right about now. But I think I'm going to make it. I might just barely make it. Let's hope for the best. Oh yeah, full service, full service. Oh my god, I got it right on a T. That is awesome, 240 AP. Unlock left side of the door. We are actually early. I am shocked. You might as well just, flick on the DRA, turn off the train brakes, and just let the brake pipes start to fill up and everything. Because we're on flat ground, we can't really throttle out anyways. We probably should keep the train brake on, honestly. But for the sake of just getting ourselves off, look at how close I was to this car stop. I am off by just like an inch or two. That is pretty terrible how close I was to this car stop. Just an inch or two. This is not bad for, my 15th attempt trying to stop this train, right? So it looks like these guys are glitching. They don't know what they want to do. I don't think they want to go on my train because they can't even get inside the train. So I think it's okay. We're going to leave these two behind. They're folks, don't do drugs. This is what happened to you, folks. It says wait till 20:38 and 49 seconds, so we're going to have our finger right on the closed door button, and we're going to see if these two are actually going to get inside the train for us to take off. We got 10 seconds to find that out. It is time to shut the doors. Sorry, folks, you didn't make it on the train. Goodbye. By the way, did you notice that the windows actually roll up on that? I didn't realize that. And let's go ahead and put throttle 3 and turn off our DRA. We got to get to Reading by 20:53 and 14 seconds. We will make it if we don't have our AWS go off. And by the way, I apologize if you hear any fireworks. Somebody's doing fireworks today. Why are they doing fireworks? I do not know. It boggles my mind. Because of World War I and World War II, the Great Western Railway ended up being nationalized and becoming a government railway. And eventually it became privatized again, and the Great Western Railway became a railway and now is operated by First Group. Once it was privatized, First Group essentially was called First Great Western as part of First Group, and eventually changed its name in 2015 to Great Western Railway to essentially try to revalue the founders' idea of the Great Western Railway Company. Nowadays, the Great Western Railway is officially the only railway in the UK that has retained its original name from before the war, before privatization, and before nationalization. Just something to keep in mind, back when it was a private company originally. And so, if you look at this original map from 1930, the original Great Western Main Line linked London Paddington Station with Temple Mead Station in Bristol by way of Reading, Didcot, Swindon, Chippenham, and Bath. And the line was essentially extended westward through Exeter and Plymouth to reach Truro and Penzance. Penzance at the time was the most westerly railway station in England. So a lot of people probably don't know this, especially if you're not in the UK. I definitely didn't know this until I started looking things up here. But the guy who invented the broad gauge for the rail line, Brunel, he actually envisioned the Great Western Railway actually going across the Atlantic Ocean. And so he built something called the SS Great Western to carry the railway's passengers from Bristol to New York. I did not know that. Most of the traffic from North America soon moved to the larger port of Liverpool. in some other railways territory, not the Great Western territories, but some of the transatlantic passengers were actually landed at Plymouth and conveyed to London by a special train. Great Western ships linked Great Britain with Ireland, the Channel Islands, and France. So who knew the Great Western Railway would actually expand out and have other ventures beyond railways? Also, a lot of people may not realize this, but the headquarters of the railway was originally established at Paddington Station. Now, it didn't start out at Paddington Station. Eventually, committees were in Bristol and London. They eventually combined into a single board that met in Paddington, and eventually the headquarters were established there. The locomotives and rolling stock were actually built and maintained at Swindon Works. I'll try to put these places up on a map so you can kind of figure out where they are in relation to this London reading location that we drive on today. Other workshops were eventually acquired as it merged and amalgamated, whatever you say, however you say that word, with other railways, including Shrewsbury Company's Stafford Road Works at Wolverhampton. Reading Single Works was established in buildings to the north of oh my god, I'm already saying that wrong. Reading Single Works was established in buildings to the north of Reading Railway Station, and eventually, years later, Concrete Manufacturing Depot was established in Taunton, where things like track components to bridges were actually cast there. So given we're about 12 miles out from Reading, we are going to probably get some more AWS, and I'm just clicking Q because I'm so scared of that thing going off on me. Keep in mind, if you do have that issue with the AWS goes off, and you're going to keep in mind your brake demand light, it's going to go off this little guy right here, that red light right there, brake demand. So you will probably want to hit the emergency brake to flat out, essentially empty out your pipes and just empty everything out, and then eventually get your train back on track. You might have to, work your brakes. You might have to turn your throttle off to make this all work. But food for thought for you guys, if you ever get stuck, hit the emergency brake just to empty out the pipes and reset the train. You can't even reset it with the AWS like you can on American Freight, where you flip cut out to cut in, or flip a fuse and that will do it. In this case, you can't do it here. By the way, folks, if you've been enjoying the Great Western Express, please give me a like, leave me a comment, and definitely subscribe. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about, some of the places I've been talking about, whether I'm even accurate at all, or if these are things you've never even heard about, or even something that just kind of stood out for you and you found really fascinating. What I'm trying to do with these routes, instead of just going from point A to point B, we're just going from London Paddington to Reading, even though we're really going to Didcot Parkway. We might as well talk about the history. Might as well talk about the history of the rail line. Might as well talk about the history of the cars, the history of the cities that we're going through, and a few other things. We'll see how much of history we can even do with the journey mode that's available here. Obviously, with 365 something timetable modes, we should have plenty of opportunities to talk about history over time. Probably not going to get to timetables yet. My main goal right now is to deal with journey mode, try to get platinum medals on those, gold medals where applicable, you know what I mean? And so, if you guys are enjoying it, as usual, like, subscribe, leaving comments and whatnot, right? Passenger services for the Great Western Express. Early trains originally gave people a choice of first class or second class carriages. By 1840, this choice was extended. Passengers could be conveyed by something called the slow goods train, which were also known as third class rail. Right, third class rail, the 1844 Railway Regulation Act made it a requirement, a legal requirement, that the Great Western Railway, along with everybody else, had to serve each station with trains that included third class accommodation of a fare not more than 1 penny per mile and at a speed of at least 12 miles an hour. By 1882, third-class carriages were attached to every train except for the fastest expresses. Don't know if they've kind of done this with HST. I don't believe HST even has third-class rail. As far as I know, it's for first class and standard class. I don't see anything like third class on here anyways. Special excursion trains, or cheap day tickets, were issued in 1849, and eventually you can also get season tickets by 1851. And 1869, most of the revenue came from second-class passengers, but eventually the third-class passenger volume grew to the extent that all of the second-class facilities started getting withdrawn by 1912. The Cheap Trains Act in 1883 also resulted in the provision of workmen trained at a special low fares at certain times of the day. Essentially, think of it as driving in rush hour, right? And getting special deals over rush hour. Alright, we're about 5 miles outside of Reading, and as soon as I can get this train to stop at this station, this one looks familiar. I've seen this one before. This is Twyford. Welcome to Twyford, folks. You guys just got run over. I am so sorry about your bodies, but you are able to survive, I guess. Express services were actually given names. They were given nicknames by the railway men. And so you had names like the Flying Dutchman Express between London and Exeter. That was actually named after a Derby horse. You also have names like the Zulu. You have names like the Cornish Rivera Express. You have the Cornishman. the Cheltenham Spa Express, you have the Cheltenham Flyer, the Bristolin, the Torbay Express. And so we're about 2.5 miles out. I'm already slowing this train down. Might have to do initial because we got to make it to 95. So a lot of these expresses included special coaches that could be detached as they pass through stations without stopping. Hard to believe that you would just ride a train like this, an express train, and you go, pip, pull the pin. It's alright, folks. Don't worry about it. The guard riding in the coach will uncouple it for you from the main train and will bring it to a stop in the correct position. These coaches were called slip coaches, folks. We are way over speed. Oh my gosh, we got to slow this train down because we are coming up into Reading pretty quick. So we got to get ourselves down to 60 miles an hour. But yeah, the first such slip coach was detached from the Flying Dutchman at a place called Bridgewater in 1869. They also offered sleeping cars. Sleeping cars were operated between Paddington and Plymouth in 1877. By 1892, the first corridor train ran from Paddington to Birkenhead, and the following year saw first trains heated by steam and would pass through train in a pipe from the locomotive, which is interesting how they did that. They actually used the locomotive to heat the train, hence why it would be called steam train, right? 1896 saw the introduction of the first-class restaurant cars, and the service was eventually extended to all classes in 1903. Eventually, sleeping cars were given to third-class passengers in 1928. And with that, I am now going to go ahead and get myself focused. I'll come back to some other history stuff later on, because I'm not even going 30 miles an hour. Let's get myself down to 30 miles an hour, please. There we go. We made it just in time, man. Zooming forward over. Oh my god, what's up with the graphics here? I noticed this has been happening lately. My graphics have gone kind of kooky lately, at least for this mission. This is the only mission I've run into this where the graphics go kind of weird like this, but I'm not going to complain. My train's rolling. It's good. At 20:51, we have, 2 minutes to get our train to dock in this very spot. We best blow our horn. For the folks that can hear it from this far away, we're letting people know, get off the flippin' yellow line, folks. Get off that line. Now, I already drove this route where I went through this light already. The light isn't that far away from the stop, so we do have to make sure we stop this train on a dime, folks. If we don't, we're going to screw ourselves over. Okay, my train's already naturally coming to stop. I'm going to try to speed up just a touch. maybe 3 of those, right? Oh my god, stop alerter. I know you're trying to beep at me here. I know there's a red light ahead of me. I'm trying to stop. I'm not trying to go faster. Actually, I am trying to go faster. So I'm going to go just a little bit faster, just to kind of go there, and that will be good. I'm going to start to slow down this train. This should be fine. Oh my god, now I'm going too slow again. This is crazy. Okay, throttle 2. We're going to try to get ourselves back up again. This is hard stopping in HST, honestly, when you only have this much space between your stop and the red light killing your gain, basically. So I'm going to try to keep this at 5 miles an hour. I think that will be good enough for the rest of the stop. It's 20:52 and 48 seconds. We might have a chance to make it on time. We might be a little bit late, but I think we've got this good, folks. We'll see how this goes. Yeah, our goal is not to pass the light. We have crazy issues if we pass the light, folks. 7, 8, 9, 10. The only way I could do this is just slam the brakes here. So let's go ahead and slam the brakes, full service. Oh, we're late by 3 seconds. That's good job, me, right? 240 AP for that. Unlock the doors, and I think that's all we got to do. We just got to load the passengers and eventually lock the doors. While I'm here, I'm going to push the DRA button here. And I'm actually going to put the parking brake because I'm probably not going to be the one driving this train anymore after this. We might as well go outside and see what's going on with our glitchy train here. I believe everybody's going to be getting out at some point. There they go. I'm like, are you guys going to leave? Are you guys going to beam to the front of the train to leave this train? Nobody's leaving, at least not in this train car. Oh, they're coming in. Okay, you guys are going in the train. You guys have planned. Oh, that's right. We're going some. I forgot about this. I forgot about this, folks. We're going somewhere else. So I think it's kind of funny here that the windows open in order to open the doors. There's no actual door handle inside the train. You have to reach outside the train to open the door via the door handle. Very odd how that works, right? So passengers are loaded. Lock the doors. Lock left. And with that, the windows go up. the door shut, and we could see what our final score was. We got speeding minus 195. Good job me there, but I got 10,080 for London Paddington to Didcot Parkway. That was not too bad, honestly. I gotta give myself a lot of credit for that. I screwed this up already a few times before, but using the safety system gives you a lot of points. Look at that, 4,290 points for using safety systems. Learn your safety system, folks. I hope you get an idea of how to use the safety system, at least going through this. And like I said before, if you like this, please definitely do like, subscribe, leave me a comment, and we will come back for another Great Western Express coming up fairly soon, right? Stay tuned, folks. Bye for now. Camera, isn't that insane? I love how that works. So that is why we have to hit the guard buzzer. These doors, actually, to be honest with you, this one, and that one all should not be opened. That is horribly dangerous. Imagine a passenger walks over here and just falls out. Well, we already know how that works because they do it right here on this bridge. Lovely.